gigantic starship named Avalon is traveling through space, heading for a colonized planet called Homestead 2. The starship is in autopilot, as all its 5,000 passengers and 258 crew members are in hibernation in a pod in their various quarters. The starship enters an asteroid belt, and its shield, that protects it from asteroid debris and harmful space radiation, is being hit continuously by small asteroids, that's weakening its shield. It counters by diverting more power to the shield and strengthening it. The ship's warning alarm goes off, as the ship is now in a collision course with a larger asteroid that's half the size as the ship. The ship collides with the asteroid, causing some of its system to fail and a pod in the passenger's quarter to malfunction and then activates. A passenger in the pod, named James Preston, who is a mechanical engineer, wakes up to an automated AI guide that tells him he's just waken up after 120 years in hibernation and that they are just 4 months away from their destination Homestead 2, and that using the ID band on his wrist, he would be able to access the things assigned to him on the ship. It guides him to his cabin, where he prepares to attend an engineering class and meet other passengers. He walks into an empty engineering class, where an automated hologram appears and is addressing the supposed to be full class. James, who is wondering why no one is in the class with him, raised his hands and asks,
Worlds. Where is everybody?
The hologram, who doesn't understand his question, tells him that there are 5,000 passengers on the ship. He runs away in panic and tries to find any other person in the ship. He enters a hall in the ship called the Grand Concourse, where he speaks to an automated desk bot, asking if there is anyone in the ship he can speak with, and the bot asks him to speak to the steward. He goes to the steward quarters and finds no one there. He tells the bot about it, and it asks him to go speak to the captain at the command ring. He runs to the command ring, but wasn't allowed into the main crew quarters as it requires special authorization. He looks through the door of the command ring and sees that no one is there either.
You gotta be kidding me.
He later enters a room called the observatory, where he asks the room where they are, and the room tells him that they are on a path to Homestead 2 and would take 90 years to get there.
I woke up too soon.
He goes back to the Grand Concourse and tries using a communicating system to send a message back to the Homestead Company branch on Earth, explaining his situation to them, and sends the message. The system confirms the message has been sent and would reach Earth in 19 years, and would get back a reply in 55 years, leaving James feeling hopeless.
55 years.
James, feeling helpless, is walking down the hall before seeing someone cleaning a glass cup at the bar area in the ship.
I thought I was the only one awake. Who wants to sleep on a beautiful day like this?
The man offers to get him a drink, but when James looks down at his legs, he realizes that the man, whose name is Arthur, is a robot.
You're a robot.
The next day, he wakes up and heads to get coffee from a coffee machine in the ship, but soon realizes that most of the coffee on the menu, except for one, are reserved for gold-class passengers only, and he can't access them. He settles for the coffee accessible to him, and later on, he goes to gather information in the ship's library about the hibernation pods, and later head to the hibernation quarters where he manages to reactivate his pod. He lies down in the pod, closing his eyes as he hopes to get back into hibernation, but soon opens his eyes as nothing happened. After that, he tries to break into the main crew's hibernation quarters, which he later realizes is unbreakable. He's later seen coming out of an elevator and heading to his cabin, but soon notices a malfunction with the elevator. Sometime later, he breaks into one of the gold-class suite, where he now often goes to play games and orders expensive meals in a restaurant there. One day, he enters a special cabin in the passengers' hibernation quarters, in which he sees spacesuits designed for spacewalks. He wears one of the spacesuits, opens the airlock's door, and sets out on his spacewalk, where he lets out all his emotions as he floats in space. He later returns back from the spacewalk, leaves the airlock and takes of the suit, but soon goes back into the airlock, this time without a spacesuit on, as he wants to end his life. He tries to open the airlock's door, but later runs out of the airlock and into the passengers' hibernation quarters, but then slips on a bottle and falls. He stands up, but his attention falls on a woman named Aurora, who is still in hibernation in one of the pods, as he's captivated by her. He goes through her profile and watches her passenger's interview video, and then talks to Arthur about her, and then keeps watching her interview video every day until he starts getting ideas of waking her up. He asks Arthur for advice on what he should do, as he now knows how to wake her up, but he would be stranding her in the ship without her getting to her destination. But Arthur, who is a robot designed for interactions, tells him he can't advise him on the matter.
These are not robot questions.
Leaving James to ponder on the thought himself. He finally makes up his mind, as he's decided to wake her up. So the next day, he goes to her pod, caused it to activate, and leaves the hibernation chamber to his cabin to calm himself as she undergoes the awakening process. He later goes to the grand concourse and sees her there, looking around and confused, just as he was 3 years ago. He calls out to her and tells her that they are the only ones awake.
Are you saying nobody's awake?
He then takes her to the observatory, where she's told by the observatory that they are 89 years away from Homestead 2. She tells him they need help and should try contacting the main crew. He takes her to the command ring where the main crews are and shows her that the door can only be opened by one of the main crews, who are still in hibernation, and that he's even tried breaking in before. In a state of panic, she runs into the passengers' hibernation quarters as she looks for her pod so she can try to get back into hibernation. James, who trying to calm her down, tells her that he has already tried everything. She later calms down, trying to accept her fate, and goes to her cabin to get rest. James later goes to the bar and tells Arthur about the news.
Aurora's awake. Congratulations.
He tells Arthur not to tell Aurora that he's the one that woke her up, as he wants to tell her himself. The next morning, Aurora is seen asking the desk bot if there is a way one could be put back into hibernation if a pod breaks down, but the bot tells her that the pods can never break down, leaving her frustrated. She's then joined by James, and they both head to the restaurant to get food, not noticing the flickering of the bot as they go. At the restaurant, Aurora realizes that James has been having the same type of meal as breakfast for over 1 year, and offers to get him one of the gold class meal, as she is one herself. She talks to him about finding a way to get back into hibernation, but he tells her there is nothing they can do, as he's tried everything. Not ready to give up, she tries to find information to get clues herself, and later tries to break into the main crew's quarters, but did not succeed. One day, Aurora, who has finally accepted her reality, goes to interview James, as she wants to write down their story for others to read. She asks him why he wanted to relocate to Homestead 2, leaving his family and his life on Earth behind, to which he tells her that he just wanted a new life and a fresh start. She later tells him her story too, that she paid for a round-trip ticket as she plans on staying on Homestead 2 for a year and comes back to Earth and writes about her adventures. After that, James takes her to the luxury suite where they played different games together, and then later on, he introduces her to Arthur.
Lovely lady.
This is Aurora.
They chats together with Arthur, and after that, she goes to bed. Later on, James asks her on a date using a robot.
Is he asking me on a date?
She agrees, and later that night, he meets with her and they both head to the bar. They spend some time at the bar, and later on, he takes her to the airlock where they put on spacesuits and then heads out into space for a spacewalk. After the spacewalk, they shared a kiss before heading to his cabin where they spend the rest of the night. Sometime later, James discovers a flowering bed in the ship and gifts Aurora a flower he got from there, and later on, the ship is passing by a star and they rush to the observatory together to get a better view of it. James wishes her a happy birthday after the view, as it's her birthday in Earth's time, and later that night, they celebrated it in a restaurant in the luxury suite, and then later at the bar with Arthur. James later leaves the bar and goes to the washroom, where he prepares a ring as he wants to propose to Aurora. Arthur and Aurora are having a conversation, when he unknowingly tells Aurora that James was the one that woke her up.
We spent months deciding whether to wake you up.
James walks out of the washroom and meets a shocked Aurora, who asks him if he really woke her up. Surprised by the question, he answers her truthfully, trying to explain himself, but a devastated Aurora walks away from him and goes to her cabin to cry out her pain. He tries to talk to her the next morning, but she walks away again, and later that night, she goes to his room while he's sleeping and rain down punches on him, directing all her anger into every punch she throws. The next day, he speaks to her using the ship's microphone while she is jogging around the ship and apologizes for everything he's caused her, to which she reacted angrily as she's not ready to forgive him. As days goes on, she tries her best to avoid him, and even sharing the days they spend with Arthur, as she does not want to run into him.
Tuesday's my day with Arthur.
It's Wednesday.
One night, James is in his room when the sheep system malfunctions again, shutting down the main commands. And after that, more malfunctions happens in the ship, affecting the food machine and the elevator. Amidst their despair, they hear a voice from the sheep speakers, and in disbelief, they both rush to the main concourse and finds a man standing there, who turns out to be the commander. He asks them how long before they get to Homestead 2, as his hibernation pod 2 has malfunctioned. He takes them into the main cruise chamber and tells them not to touch anything.
Now that you're in, don't touch anything.
He checks the sheep's systems but did not find any problem that's causing the sheep's malfunctions, and then suggests they have to do the checking manually. They were heading to check more parts of the ship when a robot falls from the sheep's top, almost hitting the commander, which James confirms it's the 15th robot breakdown since he wakes up. They later enter Cinto, the passenger's hibernation chamber, checking the pods that malfunctioned, and as the commander checks Aurora's pod, he learns that James is the one that tampered with it and asks him if she knows. The next day, Aurora is swimming in the pool when the ship's gravity system fails, making everything in the ship float, which almost drowns her in the floating water. The gravity system comes on again, and drowning Aurora manages to swim out of the pool. Later on, they are seen discussing the malfunctions happening in the ship with the commander when he collapses. They did a body scan on him and discovers that some of his organs has failed, which was caused by a problem with his hibernation pod, and that he only has little time left before it kills him. He had his final moment with them, bids them farewell and asks them to find out what's happening with the ship and fix it. He gives them his ID band, that they now have the authorization to enter anywhere in the ship, and then passes away. Suddenly, the ship shakes violently, the danger alarm system goes off.
This can't be good.
Everything in the ship, including Arthur, starts to malfunction. He acts violently and James shuts him down, preventing him from doing more damage, and heads into the main engineering quarter to find what's causing the ship's malfunctioning. They checked all the control systems for any damage, and later head to check the power plant's chamber. They opened its door, but were sucked in as parts of the chamber has holes as a result of the collision with the asteroid a year ago, exposing the room to the extreme vacuum of space, which almost chokes them due to low oxygen levels. They manages to seal the hole, and later discovers that the ship's reactor has overheated and that they need to open its door from the outside so the heat can flow out into space. James gives Aurora the commander's ID band and tells her she's going to need it in case he doesn't make it out alive, and then head out into space with a spacesuit and a heat shield in hand. He tries to open the reactor's door so the heat can flow past, but it won't stay open unless he remains there to hold it open. He tells Aurora about it, and she panicked, pleading with James not to go ahead, fearing that the heat will kill him. He tells her they have no other option and that the ship will blow up if they don't hurry. He opens the reactor's door, shielding himself with the heat shield. He hangs on for a bit, but the pressure overpowered him and pushes him out into space. The reactor's temperature subsides, and everything is functioning normally again, but James, who is floating away in space, is running out of oxygen as his spacesuit has broken, and the pressure in the suit is dropping.
Oxygen level critical.
He apologizes again to Aurora, who rushes down to the airlock, wears a spacesuit, and sets out to save him. She sees him floating away from the ship and goes after him. She tries to grab him, but the rope attached to her spacesuit prevents her from going that far. But luckily, she sees the rope attached to his spacesuit, grabs it, pulls him inside and puts him in a recovery pod, as he had already passed out. The pod scans him and tells her that he's dead and that it would need special authorization to proceed with the reviving process. She uses the commander's ID band for the authorization, and the pod eventually proceeds, doing everything he can to revive James. James eventually opens his eyes, and Aurora, who couldn't contain her happiness, climbed on him and kissed him. The next day, they fixed Arthur, pays tribute to the commander, and gives him a space burial. Later on, James tells Aurora that he's found a way he could put her back into hibernation using the recovery pod. She tells him there is only one of the pod and she won't leave him alone. He proposes to her the next day in the bar, and they live the rest of their days together on the ship. 88 years later, the ship finally reaches Homestead 2, and the passengers and all the main crew wakes up and heads to the main concourse and sees that it filled with trees. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.